third time is a charm. That's what they say. Matt O'Keefe, man, it is good to chat with you. We've tried
You
to chat,
too, man.
and this time it's gonna work well. I know it. I can feel it.
I promise. I promise. My apologies. I'm in the tech world now. One thing I'm not figuring out is my laptop somehow. So we're good now. I think we're good.
Yeah, so you're in the tech world, and so as we were talking about earlier, years ago we met for the first, or not the first time, but we did a podcast on your background with how you met Matt, how you then got into the fitness space and really started to work with athletes and create opportunities for them, which I thought was incredible. Then you start working with Loud and Live. You're doing events, you're doing all kinds of stuff, and now you've made a shift to HWPO, which really you've been working on for a really long time with Matt Frazier, but now it's just
Yeah.
kind of like you're officially there. And so, I think a great topic of conversation today, and something I think all athletes should listen to, is this idea of building a brand, what you guys have done with HWPO, and the opportunities in the fitness space. So before we get to HWPO, I guess an initial question is, where do you see the industry of functional fitness at today? And where do you see it going in terms of professional careers for athletes? Because you've been in more deals than I think anybody at this point. So where is the industry at today in 2022 compared to where it was at maybe when you first got into it with Matt?
Yeah. I mean, the status of the industry, the athlete, the brand that contributes to it is wonderful. Honestly, even considering the last couple of years, that the evolution is insane and the progression, it's thriving. Fitness was such a big, I hate to say the word winner with COVID, but it really was. It was something that I think a lot of people got a chance to lock in on and focus on, and gained a lot of perspective on, because it was something that they had within their control in that time to possibly contribute to. Helping them with what COVID, if they attracted, if they contracted it. But in general, from a business perspective, man, when I started doing what I'm doing with athletes specifically back in 2013, 14, early 14, um, to where it's today, man, it is crazy. We were talking about deals in the hundreds of dollars, a month, or even low thousands a year back then. People talking, everybody wearing the t-shirts of every brand, and now we're talking about very specific clothing deals, equity situations for athletes, because their brands stand on their own and they have such power. Their voice is so powerful, and their authentication for those brands is incredible. So the evolution, for many within this space, and that's not just a Matt specific or a Tia specific conversation. There's many powerful athlete brands, individual brands, that have a heavy hand, and they command a lot of money, and involvement in whatever they're involved in. It's really it's such I have a huge sense of pride around it. But our industry, CrossFit specific, and then fitness in general, has progressed so much. Um, it's a multi-billion-dollar network, and a lot of that progress has been built around the voice of an athlete. I mean, let's
Mm,
be real.
yeah.
Those brands have all worked their butts off, and they've done really cool things and built products that speak to the consumer. Athletes have helped speak to the consumer greatly, authenticated a lot of those things, and those brands have told great stories around them because they have great stories to tell. So, and man, it's amazing where it's at today. Is it's not beyond my wildest dreams. I will tell you that. This destination, I think it's a mini destination. Truly, I think there's so much more work to do. I could see this. There's just a lot of work and a lot of luck that has to go into getting to where we're at today. But it's in a great spot.
Well, so let's talk about the great spot that it's in. So you look at athletes from the past, right? Let's just talk like the legends categories of the past, right? Whatever the, you know, put whoever you want in that category. Some of them have gone on to create, businesses of different types, online businesses. Matt Chan, for example, is a firefighter, but also has online business. Spieler has brick and mortar, but also online business, and several others, right? But then the sports started to evolve and grow, and you started seeing the likes of, like the Matt Fraziers of the world, who now have really built up a brand and something you're really aligned with, and You also have Tia with Proven and others. I'm curious that the first evolution of athletes kind of came, and a lot of the athletes are doing similar things in terms of outside, right? Trying to build brands, but not all of them. Then you have these other newer athletes who are just now either getting into the game or just building it. But is the barrier to entry getting bigger and bigger and bigger for an athlete to turn pro? And so what I mean by that is, if you take like I'll use I don't know, Tia as an example, right? She generates enough money from her sponsors, her businesses, her whatever, that she could train full time. And so do these top 10 athletes. Let's just say, there's a category. Over time, does it become unfavorable for anybody else to ever crack that because they can't commit the time needed to break into that category? Is the barrier getting harder to become a professional CrossFit athlete? I guess is my question.
It's a great question, and I think the answer is it's only getting better. It's just, the resources at the top are getting greater, so it's hard to catch up to that, right? Like guys like Matt and Tia, particularly as the two greatest in male and female ever. They've earned everything they've got through their hard work, but and all their hard work on the business side too has created their ability to be more and more focused, to be greater and greater. Um, but the depth at which an athlete gets paid grows every year. There's what this space continues to prove, fitness in general, that training story. This isn't even CrossFit specific. We're the best spot for that. We didn't invent it, but we created a really incredible amount of awareness around brands telling stories about training. People that train in the gym, train hard, work hard, and it being so relatable. It's become the most relatable sports story. LeBron James training, in the gym is way more relatable than shooting threes and dunking a basketball, right? I say
Mhm.
that all the time. So, that's sort of, cast a wider net over time. But in our sport, athletes are allowed to be or earning the position of pro at a deeper level at this point because there's more money in the space. So there's more brands willing to invest in people for the future. So we work with Jason Hopper, Ellie Turner is a new client. Like these people are able to full time train now, and they're new, right? I think it's still equally as hard to become great because there's just a lot of work and a lot of hours that go into that. So there still exists this sort of barrier. It's a resource barrier, but I think it's softer. Man, you were on the front end of this when you were doing this and you won the CrossFit Games. You were maintaining other jobs. You did uniquely throughout your entire career, and you kind of were on you're involved as this sort of evolved, and you were probably one of the first athletes to really build a if not the first, a massive brand around things you were doing, and you had a lot of great endorsement deals. That stuff's evolving. More people are getting paid, and yeah, the top is earning more and more and more. So I guess you could say that that creates this sort of now unique barrier. There are people that are turning pro at a greater rate, but it's harder to sort of resource up. But that's sport. It's really funny,
Yeah.
and you and I have talked about this so many times. Is that I think we have this extreme ownership in our space from fans and customers. People that watch it, love it, do it. They think it's different. And there's such this great passion for people to say, like, we've got to grow, athletes need to be paid more. I couldn't agree more, and we, people like myself and you, work really hard for that growth. But what we're seeing today is the same that exists in any sport. Think about athletes, like those guys do things for 4 years and are under resourced out of passion a lot of times, right? The NBA isn't different. It isn't much different too. Like there's 10 athletes with shoe deals. There's a huge rich category, and then there's a grinder group. Yeah, we're talking about a million instead of 30 million, but there's still
Right.
that same structure that exists. We're evolving up, which is great. Those lower end deals are getting greater and greater at a high rate, and it's awesome. There's a deeper group getting paid, and they're getting paid more and more every year. because they're marketable. They're building brands. They've learned from the crop of athletes like yourself and Matt and Tia and Katrin and Annie. And they have this sort of next level. They've leveled up the entry, and they're smart. They know how to build content. They know how to tell stories around themselves. So fun.
The storytelling is the key. I was going to ask you about that. So we talk about how people feel connected to the fitness space, and I think that CrossFit, for whatever, for as a blessing or curse, I would assume it's a blessing. People feel extremely connected to it because it's a brand, it's a methodology, it's a sport, but it's also a business. And the business then goes out and makes decisions that they feel like are in the best interest of the business, right? The challenge is that when you feel connected to it as a methodology, as something that changed your life, when the business makes a decision, it's hard to differentiate between those two. And you saw that, I think, a little bit with Dave leaving, or however you want to refer to that. Do you think Dave leaving, I'm curious, is that an example of just the community being so close knit to seeing that's still a business and a sport? And then what, I guess, where do you see that going in the future? Do you see them putting one person at the cornerstone of the CrossFit Games, or do you see them kind of spreading it out in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you speak to what have always sort of categorized as extreme ownership.
Yeah,
I dealt with it with Wadapalooza. Somebody who's volunteered there 10 years. That was um, that's their thing. They own it. And it's a positive. It's more positive than anything. To even categorize anything else as negative is irresponsible. It's just extreme ownership comes with positive and negative to it. And I think this business unit, when you look at it that way, more than just sport, has emerged and over and sort of raced in front of a lot of mainstay sport platforms because of it. We are a bigger market than some sports people would be really surprised to hear that we're bigger than that have been around a long time. So we've come overcome barriers. We talk about the Dave sort of situation. That's where you see the emotional response to that. The Dave people and then the not Dave people, and sort of how they react to that. But what then you see on the backside of that, and this would be the same with me leaving Loud and Live, Greg's exit. We're all sort of, unfortunately replaceable. And what stays consistent throughout all this is people are really passionate about the sport, the product, doing it in the gym every day and watching it because you see, us continue to grow, the numbers go up, and people still watch it and do it. Even though some of the things, there's been so much extreme change. I mean, the fact that CrossFit is still thriving today, proves it. I mean, look what we've gone through the last 2.5 years. I mean, it's been insane. I mean, there are, that's called, it's not even a hurricane or a monsoon. I mean, like, that's literally like this, sort of like, you know, life-changing moments over and over again for a brand or a sport or a platform. So yeah, I think, you know, forward and I'm sort of feeling it already because I've been present at some of the open announcements and that all went down right before Wadapalooza. Um, and I think there's a real shift and focus on the sport and the stories within it, the athletes. Matt was back at the open announcement, and they celebrated him, that and which is really cool and right. And I think it'd be irresponsible to not continue to tell that story forward. And it was really nice, honestly. Like, I think that that being, I think, their most powerful marketing tool, honestly. Like, if we'd be, I think they'd be irresponsible to not think that too. Is those powerful stories of Matt, how he worked hard to be where he's at, Tia, um, people who have overcome adversity to get even to the pro level as the focus, like that. You need to, as a brand and a sport platform, be telling those stories, because that's what makes me click on and watch. That's that keeps us interested. Those are the people that we fan forward, and want to watch. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like. I think that the face of the sport should be the sport and the athletes. And I see that really starting to evolve here right now. in a big way, which would, it should be exciting to see how that plays out.
I think, yes, I agree. I think it's interesting when you look at Matt or when you look at Tia and the support that you provided them from a business side. And I think that when you have this, Matt actually, I think to their credit, I'm using them as examples, but they're also very savvy in business themselves. I
They
think Matt
are.
is they're both very savvy and they have savvy people around them. And so I'm curious with HWPO, with Proven, with different things, you now left Loud and Live, and just from like a nuts and bolts perspective, I'm curious. You're the CEO now of HWPO, but you
Mhm.
also then have an additional company that still has athletes under it. Is that how your
Yep.
transition occurred? Okay, got it.
It did. Yeah, it's not different than kind of um, my structure before in terms of
Right.
how my time was allocated. They're just not the same organization. Daniel Robbins is a guy that had done a lot of work with me at Loud and Live on the athlete business, and is taking a more prominent role in the transition. But it's no different than my time before. A lot of my focus is on this one thing, like events were before, and then now HWPO. But I'm not exiting my athlete relationships. That was something Matt and I talked very specific about my transition. And it's a group that I'm always going to care for, whether I was formally involved or not. And it made a lot of sense to be formally involved, continuing forward. I mean, honestly, it wasn't even that much of a conversation. It was like, hey, I know you're going to still want to do this. Yep, I
Right.
am. But yeah, that part. When you talk about those two, by the way, it's greatness. And I put you in this category with all the success you've had. You take your athletic success and you sort of transfer it. People are who they are, no matter what they do. Really, is what I would say about you and those guys. They're incredible people, Matt and Tia. Their success outside of the gym is no,
No
sort of
secret.
surprise to me. You know.
100%. And so I'm curious, you met Matt a long time ago. You started building this. As I really loved watching from the sidelines because I watched HWPO start to grow, right? And you get the Nike deal, and all of a sudden you create these HWPO, and then you start branding it and branding it and branding it. And he's competing, he's winning, and boom, 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 boom. How early on did you guys start planting the seeds to say, hey, we're gonna our brand that we're going to lead from the front with is not the Matt Frazier brand, it's HWPO. And this is what the structure looks like as you continue to compete and then subsequently end up retiring. Like, did you guys start formulating this years and years in advance, or did it all just kind of seem to come into place? Because from an outsider's perspective, let's just take the retirement perspective. It's like, wow, he retires shortly after the book comes out. There's a whole storyline behind everything. It just seemed very primed and ready. Was that your doing, or what happened?
Yeah, it's awesome to hear it spoken, because it's been a wild ride. Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I had this like sort of playbook that we wrote down and it's all playing out the way. I think what we did was just make really smart decisions all along. Matt, particularly for himself too, and I got to be a part of that and help. And we have a really good relationship, and we think a lot alike. Really, we resonated with each other early on how, maybe I approached business was, how he had approached what he wanted to pursue. So they were just both goals. They were different goals, and we were willing to die to get where we wanted to. And that's where we're most aligned. And that's what HWPO is. And that's kind of how it was born, is that, Matt wanted to, have something that people could point to as, sort of their badge, that spoke, to how they, how they felt about, anything they did, and, you know, and how they associated with him, which is a brand, right? Like in the grand scheme of things, HWPO just means no bullshit, and, do the work, and, grind, and, roll your sleeves up, and, you know, t- focus and work your ass off to achieve it. And it meant a lot to him, and he wanted something that was sort of tattooed on him, literally and figuratively, that spoke to that. That wasn't just Matt Fraser. I mean, HWPO is Matt Fraser, and Matt Fraser is HWPO. And then looking at how that would progress over time, we wanted to, really offer the opportunity for people to wear that as their sort of badge of honor, and to sort of create our tribe and build a lot of culture around that. There's no mystery that the key to success with a brand is culture. And our culture is just so direct and attractive, and it speaks, directly to people, to consumers, if we're going that route. And they, you know, we never looked at, like, how it would look or what we would do with it, that we would just stay true to it, right?
Right.
True to our culture, true to our brand, true to Matt. And, we'd always make decisions that made the most sense, for him and his goals in it. And, and when we got, done with, competing, we knew that, we would package something that talked about how he trained at some point, under HWPO, but we never really focused on it because everything for him, and this is, really what what HWPO is today, is like, set a mark and meet it. The destination is always going to be so far in the distance. Set lofty and big goals, and then the micro in the middle. But to get to that, sort of destination takes a lot of work, and we want to help people with that and create, their physical and mental attributes to help them attain that. But starting a training business was always a part of, the plan.
Right.
We thought about that early on, and the best part about it was he was never willing to do this
When he was
until he,
competing, right?
yeah,
Which
until
I
he
think even
retired.
even carried into the story even more because he gets done competing. Everybody's like, "Oh, show me what's underneath the hood, right? Show me the secret to the success." And boom, comes out of the training program. I thought it was genius that he wasn't, letting the cat out of the bag until later on. And when he rolled out the partnership with Hybrid, um, which brings us to, it's interesting. So the plan all along was to roll out a training program. Is that right?
It really was, because and it was, perfectly on brand Matt, which is HWPO, to say, I'd be unauthentic if, inauthentic if I told people what I did, because I said I never would until I was done. And that's how we are going to run this business. Speak about what we feel like we're confident and expert on, and find expertise outside. Be authentic, right? And that was the most authentic thing, was, when he wouldn't talk about what he did until he was done. And we feel like what he did, and how we approach things, has a really cool, unique approach. I mean, he's unique, honestly, and I think a
Right.
lot of people have stayed attached to it because of that. So yeah, we were always planning on putting something out, when he retired, when he was ready.
So why did you guys? So this is like a purely business topic.
Yep.
Why did you, as Matt O'Keefe, Frazier, as HWPO, decide to go with a collaboration instead of creating your own app from the beginning? I mean, at that point, you guys have sponsorships with Nike, these different companies. Why wouldn't you just? Couldn't you just have invested in your own app? Why did you partner with
We could.
Hybrid?
It's a really good question. I think, and it was really the perfect next move for how Matt, thought about and approached business. I think that, what I've seen, happen over the last 2 years with Matt, is this, beautifully, mindful and aggressive entrepreneur. What's up, buddy?
Oh yeah, you got Caden in here.
Caden, what's up, dude? I've seen this beautiful, and strategically aggressive entrepreneur develop, and I don't think that necessarily was the case. You got to understand, he was just tunnel focused on, winning the CrossFit Games, and that was his bread and butter, and that's how he created revenue. And Matt is a perfect example of just not knowing what he doesn't know. He never makes the same mistake twice. He sort of, builds, his life off of experience, and he hadn't really delved or allowed himself to spend any time sharing his mind with, what, our business operations looked like, and, where he'd be willing to, be a little risky with things, or, invest. And I think that, we really were at this moment where he was, like, all right, I know this is an opportunity. I don't know how big the opportunity is. What do you think? And I said, I think this is a massive opportunity, honestly. And I think that, he was most comfortable with the collaboration, and we were really tight with those guys. And I think it was just one of those things that was like a really good next step, where it was like, hey,
Right.
I don't want to invest millions of dollars, because people don't realize that, what Rich does, what you do, what we do costs millions of dollars a year to do. Um, and I think at that point he was like, I want to walk into this before I run into it. And who knows? Maybe this situation that we're getting in has an evolution to it, and that can be what we continuously grow off of. But that was the initial decision. Was we were friends with those guys. They had had a lot of success. He wanted to collaborate in the end after a lot of conversations about what it would look like to invest in that. He was just like, I think collaboration is probably my best next step, or I might have a heart attack even trying to do this. So,
Yeah.
so
And so,
that was the why on the collaboration side, and it was the right choice at that
but
time.
the and I think hindsight's always 2020 because we look
Yeah,
back at some of these situations. And to be clear, hybrid, excuse me, HWPO just recently launched your own new app, and that was about a little over a year ago, or a little over a year since you first rolled out hybrid. A little of like a year and a half, is
it's a
it?
year. It's no, it's literally a year. So we
And
were with them from it's about 12 months, 13 months now.
so let's talk about the year contract. So you get on board with hybrid, and I think for any listener, any patrons of HWPO, they're probably wondering, why did you pivot from the hybrid model onto your new model? And I obviously there's benefits from for a variety of benefits, but ultimately you guys decided to kind of not go the route of, there's a big barrier to kind of create your own app. You had friends in the space. You're like, dude, let's just jump on board with them. So looking at that particular relationship from a high level, what do you think could have been done differently in the beginning to maybe have it where as the year went on, as time went on, you wouldn't have felt so compelled to want to go off and go do your own thing, I guess. Like, what made you want to go do your own thing? And then what could you have done in the beginning to set it up where you didn't really have that desire to go do your own thing? Is that, if that
Yeah,
makes sense?
it's a great question. The reason to do what we're doing now today is because of the members, right?
Because of
It's
the
to
scale. So it was
yeah,
proven, in other words.
it's proven, but more importantly is like really have control of what the entire experience, right? And you're really good at this. You understand this. It's just, you know, there's not, one right way to do things, but there's your way that want to do things and you think is the best way. That's the why in the grand scheme of things. This is an us thing. This wasn't a them thing. This is, hey, our brand needs to live on its own. That to me became a quick non-negotiable. It was like, listen, this stuff, Matt's brand, our brand is a powerful brand. It has a message that I don't want to blend with others. I want it to be on its own. And Matt did. And then B, I want to, make or break ourselves. I want to control service and tech. That side of it. Is something that I learned a lot about over time. I mean, I've been involved with GoAud. Like I understand tech. I've heard, a ton from you. It was a world that I think we were very apprehensive to be involved in at the time a year ago, that we got comfortable with and learned a lot about partners that could be potential out there to help us build this. Um, I want to be, and we want to be in control of the consumers' experiences, our patrons' experiences. We want them to um, have the best everything, and we feel like we have a really good way of going about that, and we've built around that with this new tech. So that was a big part of it. In the service side, like we were able to do service with the current relationship. Um, but we want to 100% do it our way. I want people to think that they're stealing from us, like, and that to me is a real thing. Like I want to over service people. I want them to feel like they're getting incredible value for what they're buying, what they're paying into. This isn't a transactional thing for us. Like we're not looking, to the contrary. Matt has taken this step and said, I will make less money to make sure that this is right and that we can grow this properly and service clients. We've hired 10 people. We've built our own app. And we're going to hire more because, for every 1,000 people that are on this platform, we're building a formula around how that needs to be serviced. We saw that a certain way, and we wanted to do it on our own. So I think that, um, there's no one thing, but it's an us thing, really, right? I think a lot of people look at, these ends, and they're like, there had to be this, shitty moment that occurred or
Right.
something happened. It was like, no, we decided to make a decision that focused on the people that have, come to us and trusted us to train on a daily basis and do what we thought was better for them.
Dude, I think it makes total sense. The whole attachment thing. I mean, I understand the way you feel when we rebranded from NorCal CrossFit to NCFIT. A lot of it was, dude, it has nothing to do with. I still got a lot of love for CrossFit, just like you guys necessarily didn't hate hybrid. It's not that. It's just
No,
you want to be in control of HWPO's own destiny. And anybody with a brand, I think, could really appreciate that. I really do, because it's like your baby and you spend so much time and attention on it. You want to cultivate the culture and but you want to be in control of the outside perception and the internal what occurs. And so when you're attached to someone, there's a challenge there. And so yeah,
you know that, but I'm sorry to interrupt. Like, as operators, as business owners, you have to control what you can. Like, it's irresponsible to, and equally, you can't pay attention to anything you don't. But you do hit these situations, and you've done this so many times and taken bigger steps and invested in yourself and your people. um, you know, at this point, it's just, one of those situations where it's like, I want to, and you just said it, and Matt does, control our destiny and in the experience. People have invested in us heavily, and they've asked us to do certain things, and we're going to do it. And so them having their own place to speak to their community, and and be a part of their tribe, solely, and really immerse themselves in what we're doing, and then the opportunity for us to now spend a lot of time looking at what the future looks like, so that our hub becomes more of a centralized hub, so that we teach them how to think more, and build, sort of programs around that. And we get more specific to certain sports, so that kids can start to think about, how they train specifically for that through us. And then, get better at some sort of mono things, some specific things, whether it's, swimming or lifting.
so is that
Um,
where the future is that what you think is the future of HWPO? So,
yeah,
HWPO translates to many different things, right?
does.
And for us, it's funny, in a way, when we were trying to over the years, as brands do, they evolve and they grow. And our team at NC Fit has really came down to this, kind of the rallying cry of just like putting an effort above anything else, right? Like if that's our key, and we just want our members to come in, put in their best effort, and we got you. You guys with hard work pays off. It's very similar, right? You just want people to put in the hard work and it's going to pay off, but it can pay off in any arena. It's very wide. So your goal for fitness, traditionally, I think people would look at Matt Frazier and be like, oh, it's CrossFit. But I do think that your guys' goals are to reach different audiences. So what is the next audience? If you would say that, the core audience is here, what is the next circle you think for the HWPO crew?
Yeah, thank you. And I will say to that, and I'll get to your specific question. I think people watch this podcast and they're like, well, why are you, Jason, talking to someone that seemingly does the same? Because we think alike. And we know that there's plenty to go around, first of all. And, we're super aligned. First of all, we're friends. And that's the way the world works. Those are the people I want to be around. And that's kind of how I want to go about life. We all help each other out. Jason has a great product that actually we don't cross over a whole lot anyway. And even if we did, Jason would be a guy that would pick the phone up and you would talk to me and help me if I had a question about something you even specifically did. So, I do want to point that out because I think sometimes people, even your, followers, would be like, "What? Why are you doing a podcast with some guy that is running another platform that might be
Well,
competing with you?"
Well, it goes into the whole idea of like being authentic, right? If I'm a big believer in like a rising tides raises all ships,
That's
like
it.
why would I not want to talk to you about lessons learned and HWPO and your experiences? And maybe that helps someone else in the fitness space. And maybe that grows, that's my main goal right now is to talk to people, learn from them, and then share that with more people, specifically in the fitness space, whether it's a competitor, non-competitor, who cares? I just want all of us to be doing better, you know?
If you, I, and Ben and CJ and all these guys do a really good job, more people get to see what we're all doing, and there's more people being attracted to everything we're doing, and there's plenty of people that will engage all of us. And everybody I've named uniquely does their own great job with whatever they do, right? You were talking about
Kind of like the
the
circles. Do you look at it that
yeah,
way? I mean,
what's
from a
that?
business perspective, you say, "Hey, our first 6 months, we're gonna really focus in on this, CrossFitter. Then
Right.
after we get, there, we're gonna kind of branch out," or do you not look at it
Yeah,
like that?
no. So yes, like we want to really get established on our own and service people properly. We've already started. The app launched yesterday, and it's been awesome. We're really proud of it. The people are loving it already. But yeah, we'll focus a ton of energy and build a lot of things to grow around the CrossFit vertical. That's not where we're going to stop and stay. I think, what I've learned a lot and, was a part of my process in wanting to come here was just, how Matt's mind worked and kind of how far it could run and stretch, in terms of, how people train in general. And one of my, biggest pieces with this and where I have a lot of excitement is, that it's really simple to him how people move in general. And I think we can speak to a lot of different, people who specifically want to train for things sport related, because we believe in CrossFit and functional fitness, for people to train for anything is really it, right? And so in the grand scheme of things, we're looking, and we will quickly to find expertise in swimming and expertise in running and expertise in lifting, but then we want to find ways to speak to high school football players and basketball players, and we feel like we have a really good understanding of how people would move in that sport and then how that would transfer back to a really good way to train. We hear so many times you have your whole career, I'm sure, is like, damn, I wish I had found that when I was in high school. And I think, I'm the same. I'm like, man, I'm probably the fittest I've ever been in my life every year. I'm getting older and I played college sports. Matt O'Keefe today is a better athlete and a fitter athlete than Matt O'Keefe as a university athlete that played two sports. Like that to me is what I'm talking about. Like we're going to, um, you know, quickly look at opportunity to speak to people and teach them how to train for sport specific in life too. Like I mean, you do this too. I think we're launched a sweat program with with our with the new app, and it's people will be like, well, Matt can't really speak to my wife or your wife, our mom, people that don't want to move barbells and all that other stuff. He's not. Sammy is a sweat queen. I'm, so geared towards machines and things like that and longer workouts and just, getting my heart rate up and a good sweat on. And we're like, people like that are helping contribute to that. So we're building, programs for, people to work hard that want to really, be a part of our community. And it's a way that they can and don't, have to, do a 2.5 hour training program a day or an
Right.
hour of CrossFit and lifting that they don't want to do. So yeah, I mean the goal is, man, I want Matt to be a Peloton instructor. I want Matt to be, an HWPO to be this beacon when somebody walks into, a big box gym and says, I want to do functional fitness, CrossFit. Oh, there's HWPO training. Like that's my like big picture goal for this is that we democratize how people do functional fitness and CrossFit in the world through what we do. We really validate it and we provide it.
And so do you have any, goals in opening up brick and mortar?
I don't.
Yeah, just
We'll leave that to you.
yeah.
Honestly, it's funny. This came up because I don't think it's not an opportunity, but I think it would be like this distant thing where that would be sort of the late add-on if it was ever something. And again, it's the same thing that I'm talking about when it like if it came to like pro an NFL player that loved to train, that could come over and be the face and help us understand movement a little better. The same would go with that. Like if we were going to go brick and mortar, like that's not our core competency. Like we're
Mm.
not gym owners. You know, we know what we know, and we know what we don't, and then we partner with what we don't. If it's an opportunity, we'd love to explore it at some point. But honestly, I'd be calling you and saying, how do we open HWPO gyms? Let's
Woo.
do this together.
I would tell you don't do it right before COVID, but now that COVID's done, now there's a lot of opportunity.
All right, well,
Oh
let's
man.
talk.
Yeah, the last 2 years have been
Yeah,
last 2 years have been very difficult for brick and mortar. I think there's a big opportunity. I think now. I think people are looking to get back, connect with others. We're seeing it here in the gyms. I'm in our gyms every day, and then we have our digital platforms, and it's fun to watch the dynamic between the two, and then test our, just see our members in the gyms every single day. But I love what HWPO is doing. I think it's so cool what you and Matt have been able to build, and the fact that you've been able to pivot from previous kind of like, I want to say, sales and corporate job. Is that a good way to describe it? Yeah.
couldn't be more sales in corporate. I sold insurance with a jacket and tie on every day. I was in a car dealership working in my family business. I've done a lot of the sales in corporate.
And so, you go from this guy who's doing sales and insurance and et cetera to then, basically, I think you've done a lot of good for a lot of athletes and
Thank
obviously the
you.
events. And now you get the opportunity to be CEO of HWPO. And I think it's gonna be fun to watch, man. And I think that I hope this app transition has been smoother than you expected. I think that I hope that things are okay between you and hybrid. I hope that one day, I think as a business owner myself, like I realize like things are not always perfect, but I think people's intention makes a difference. And I think that if
Does.
your intentions were good, like you had good intentions at the beginning, you have good intentions now, I think that's a big thing to lean on because in business is never so cut and dry, right? I mean, you've done a lot of deals.
That's the hard part, and that's really been a big part of the conversation with them, which I don't know is like today, perfectly understood. But I just really try to point back to my track record. It's like, it's easy for people to be like, as they stab someone to say like, I've never stabbed someone, but that's not what this is. It's like, hey, like, I'm not nuclear. It would be so dumb to be nuclear because I've worked so hard and has Matt to be where we're at. We have so much more to do. We've never run an ant over in our entire life. We've worked really hard, been competitive, and focused on ourselves. That's the problem, is when you're tunnel focused on what you're doing and the people you're doing it with. Unfortunately, there's collateral in that sometimes that and there isn't perfect understanding that it's not an intentional act to where you're moving from. It's got to do with where you're going to, right? So it's just like one of those things where, business is tough. Like that stuff's really hard. There's a lot of emotion involved in it. Um, I can put my head on the pillow at night knowing that we've done right by everybody around us always. And, this move's included in that. And, we're incredibly grateful for our time there. We did a lot of great things together, and, we've spoken at great length. And even Hayden, who owns the business, was like, I'd be doing the same thing. And he agreed with that. So, it's just, we're going to focus on HWPO. I'm incredibly proud of the app. Proud of the app. I got to tell you, like, Jason knows this better than anyone. Tech's hard, and I've watched you go through it and do a great job with it. I'm excited about that chapter. We partnered with an incredible group, Fitter Training, out of UK. They've been amazing. Our developers are in the Ukraine, by the way. Like
They're in
here's a
Ukraine.
story. Here's a story I got today, and we sent the video over to those guys today. They're very aware of the space. They do a lot of work for big business too. Like I think sometimes people hear offshore stuff and they like think you're taking a cheap route. These are some of the smartest people in the world,
Yep,
and
yep, yep.
they, through this whole thing, that war that's ensued over there, their immediate response was, I need a couple of days off. We're like, dude, take as much time as you want off. We have to obviously look at a backup because we can't be in a situation where we don't have this continuing to develop and get service. They're like, please don't take the business away, and we'll be back. We need 2 days to build a bomb shelter. And so they
Dude,
did that, and then they came back to work, and they
they're
worked
over there making cocktail Molotov, those I'm
Molotov
butchering them.
cocktails.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Molotov. I mean, they're over there and they're building a bomb shelter, and yet they still want to be able to get the work done with you. Like, is
That
that just,
was 2 weeks ago, dude. They literally have worked harder and more in this period of 2 weeks to get to where we're at today to have launched. Those guys now, the bombing is closing in. They're in a city outside of like a major city.
yeah,
And we got word yesterday that like, hey, some of the bombing's getting closer. And then we sent the video, the guy sent a note back and he was like, I can work from my bomb shelter. And it was like, dude, what is like the world is pretty insane. But those guys have been incredible. So what has come to life is truly blood, sweat, and tears. These guys are there by themselves. Their families have left and they're on their laptops, literally in bomb shelters doing our app. And, people will hear that and be like, wow, you're a terrible person for making them do that. I'm
right. But they
literally
want
trying to
that work,
make them not do it and they
right?
won't listen. We have a backup to do this with and they're asking us not to. So but that was all from like tech is hard but I'm excited about this part, in this evolution. I think we've built something special, and I'm really proud of it, and I'm really, really excited. I can't wait for you to
I need to
experience it too.
I need to check it out. Our evolution for digital is like we created an app years and years ago, and then we had a new one that I showed you like a year ago. And I really felt compelled to like incorporate on demand and a bunch of stuff. And what we learned over the last year was that, and I don't know if you learned something similar, but what I learned is I had to take a deep look at like myself as the leader and as the CEO and say, hey, how do I utilize our products? Right. I go into our gyms every day. I look for motivation on the app. I go do the workout. But I think we got so excited about this on-demand follow along because we saw it pick up during COVID, but it wasn't authentic to like me. Like I don't do follow along workouts off a TV. I normally just get inspiration and go hit it or to kick our classes. So we never really talked about it on the app. And so we made a full 180 and just did, great workouts and a timer. And I think that it took me that year and that app development to realize like, hey, where are we as a business? What's authentic to us? And then stay in that lane. And I don't know if like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like lessons learned for us. And I'm sure that maybe through your hybrid experience, you probably had similar lessons learned. And like, dude, like people can tell you all they want, but until you actually experience it, you have like those aha moments. It takes time.
I, I think it's funny. You and I have had a lot of conversations about this. You get like you see success and outside, and you sort of like look how you can possibly apply that to what you do,
Yes.
right? And it's like sometimes you can get caught up in that race to what you think somebody has like really built something great around, but it doesn't always apply. You and I do, I think, a really good job of this. I know you do. We have conversations around this. I always look at exactly what you just said with things. It's like, how would I use this? Because, man, I don't think there's a more prototypical consumer in the world than me. I'm the one that's getting targeted, and I'm a dabbler in fitness and, I like to do things exactly the way you're saying it,
Right.
so when I looked at this thing and I'm like looking around and I'm like, well, Matt's not the one to ask about like how he would use this. I am, and that's hard sometimes from a leadership perspective because you got this other thing in your mind. You're just like Peloton's, tens of billions,
Right. They're
it's like,
they're they're a gazillion dollar business. We need to go that direction. And then right. Anyways, yeah, I didn't mean to
yeah,
cut you off.
no,
That's
you
it.
didn't. But that's it. It's like you and I have had these conversations along the way, and it's like, well, everybody's doing that, and they're consuming that, and it's like, um, and I've got caught in that too at times, and it's just, it's one of those things where, you gotta, we've worked for a long time in this industry and broader industry, and we've got a lot of experience. And sometimes the best thing, and this is really great for entrepreneurs, is to pay attention to yourself, and be real honest with who you are and how you might consume things and look at things, because sometimes the best answer is you being the sample, honestly. And I think that that is precisely how we've looked at this is not like how big can we get and how many people can we sort of, you know, um, do this with the way others have done it. We have to do it the way that we think will be the most successful for what we're doing, and
Dude.
that's how you build billion-dollar businesses. That's how Noble has built their business. That's how Rogue has built their business. You know that, I know that. It's just ton of focus on brand and product, and it best all fits to get to the consumer the right way. So I think that's really good that you bring that up, because I think so many young entrepreneurs look at, like, okay, Peloton, how do I put that on this, and how do I make it do this? You and I have got caught up in it, right? Like, it's you know you got to be very, it's funny. I learned a lot of this from the Noble guys. They have never wavered a speck on brand and product, and never paid attention. And there's never a conversation in their walls that says Nike does, or Adidas, or Reebok. It's always Noble does. And they're in the 0.001% of business success stories at this point right now. But what they did was, and how they approached it is so basic. And it's hard though, man. How do you
It
sit in a
is hard.
room when your back's against the wall, and it's like, I got to create revenue, not waver, you know? But the answer to being, what you want it to be, that, distant destination, is, staying really true to your brand, and your consumer, and your product along the way.
Dude. Well, Matt, I really appreciate this conversation. I think that you and I, we've had similar journeys, and for you and for me, I feel like it's just getting started. I really do. I feel
It
like what
is.
we're doing, what you guys are doing, is incredible. Um, for people that want to check you out, where's the best place to go learn more about the HWPO CEO, Matt O'Keefe? Is it Instagram, or where is it?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. OKEEFMR, at OKEEFMR. That's my handle. I poke in and out there. I'm not a good, self promoter storyteller, but HWPO Training has a handle. At HWPO Training, and website's the same.com. I'll be super involved there, and present, with a lot of stuff that we're talking about there. So check us out.
Love it, man. Well, dude, I can't wait to catch up again. I wanna sit back a couple months from now, see what evolution you've seen. But a major takeaway for today, right, is that you guys have pivoted on to something really special. You guys are staying true to your mission, and can't wait to see what happens in a couple of months, brother.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. And again, always, I think I say this every time because you just keep evolving, but congrats on all your success. And thanks for all your friendship advice. Man, you're a rock, with me, for us, for Matt. So let's keep crushing it together.
Let's do it. Thanks, brother.